my jumpsuit? I'm like really, it's like men, it's a man, you know, clothing gender is bullshit, but I had to pull this from the men's section, and I was like, this is amazing. Hi, guys. My name is Helen Rosner. My pronouns are she and her. I am a writer. I write about a lot of things. As Andy said, I mostly write about food. And if any of you know me already, that's probably why you know me, though there's also a chance that you know me because I have a really bad habit of getting into fights on Twitter. And in fact, looking around this room, statistically, it's probably kind of likely that I have gotten into a fight on Twitter with at least one of you. And I gotta say, I'm sorry. Like, very sincerely, I want to apologize to you for that. I'm still right. I do not concede, but I do want to apologize because it's really important to me that you like me. So, I've been writing about food for a really long time, and for the last year or so, I've been writing for The New Yorker, which is a dream come true. But before I was at The New Yorker, I worked at a lot of places. I have written for blogs, for websites, for food magazines, for non-food magazines where I wrote about food. I was a book editor for a while and mostly edited cookbooks. And in fact, I have written a cookbook, though for various contractual reasons, my name is not on the cover. If you find me later, maybe I will tell you whose name is. Food writing is a big umbrella term. It's like one of those phrases where you think you know what it is, but it's actually kind of everything. It contains a lot of types. And within those types of writing, I've done a lot of them. I've written about business, I've written about science, I've covered chefs and restaurants, I've done some criticism, but I'm not a critic anymore. You can take pictures of my face. I write about business, I write about science, I write like big cultural thinky things, like about chicken tenders and the Olive Garden, because I like that stuff. That's where I grew up, that's where I'm home. I also write about home cooking, and I write about recipes, and I write recipes. So, actually, before we go any further, I want to pause before we dive into like the meat of the talk. And I want to put a bracket around everything. So, bracket. That was funny, you should laugh. I put brackets, like it was a bracket. Okay, so while we are outside the bracket, I actually want to say something kind of personal, like for real, this is not a setup for a joke. I am by nature a hedger. When I'm talking with friends, or when I'm talking with strangers, or when I'm in a meeting at work, I start sentences with things that undermine what I'm about to say. I say things like, this is probably a terrible idea, but, or, I know you probably know way more about this than I do, but, or, I'm trying to say something here, and I'm not quite figuring out how to say it, and I'm gonna say it wrong, but bear with me. And this is a very bad habit, and I know that. But I have a really hard time getting past it because, as I mentioned earlier, I really want everybody to like me. And hedges are useful for that. I mean, they're not actually useful. They're probably way more annoying to the other person than they are helpful to me, but they make me feel better. So here is the hedge. Do we have a hedge? Yes, those are hedges. There's actually not a hedge emoji. Jenny, if you could get on that. There's trees, which for now we're gonna just pretend are hedges. The hedge is that today I'm gonna talk about some stuff that I feel weird talking about. And those are things like success and fame and influence, things that require a confidence that I am generally inclined to hedge. There's in fact gonna be a point in this talk, and I'm warning you about this ahead of time because it makes me so uncomfortable. There's going to be a point at this talk where I just flat out say the following series of words. I am really smart, and I'm really good at what I do, and you should fucking listen to me. So, I have a really hard time doing this sort of like aggressively positive self-talk without feeling like an asshole. And if I feel like an asshole, I feel like there's probably a good chance that you think I'm an asshole. And basically what I'm saying is like, while I do actually believe in myself, and I actually believe this, at the same time, and this is the hedge, this is what the brackets are containing. At the same time, I also consider myself to be like a tiny, helpless infant. I am a pawn of luck. I am a stupid, shitty garbage beast. Like, I'm all that, but I'm also none of that. And I'm only going to be saying that up there on a stage like this, in front of like plural thousands of people, because these large, weird words, are what this talk is about. So, brackets on. I hate myself. I am going to tell you a story about something that happened to me. It is called Woman Makes Chicken. I drew that with markers yesterday in my hotel. Please applaud, yes. I am very talented at hand lettering. So, once upon a time, this past spring, in New York City, where I live, it was snowing, and I roasted a chicken. And actually, the truth is that the story begins the day before, because the way I make roast chicken is I take the chicken out of the plastic package and I pat it dry with paper towels, and then I rub it down with what's called a dry brine, which is a combination of salt and seasonings. And you like massage the chicken with the salt and the seasonings, and then I put that salted chicken onto a plate, and I put that plate into my refrigerator without anything on top of it, so that it can sit uncovered for as long as humanly possible, up to a day. Sometimes more, if I can get it together to plan dinner more than a day ahead of time. And then, once it has hung out in the fridge for a really long time, I take it out of the fridge, it's super dry, and I rub it down with oil, and I throw it in the oven, and I cook it, and then I eat it, and it is so good, you guys. It's so good. Sorry, excuse me. It's so good, friends. It is so good. And the reason I do this is to dry out the skin. Roast chicken is my favorite food, and my favorite part of my favorite food is crispy ass skin. Yeah, can I get a round of applause for crispy chicken skin? Crispy chicken skin, ladies and gentlemen, the real MVP. So, short of literally dunking the entire bird in a massive deep fryer, which you can do, but is terrifying, the best way to get crispy skin is to thoroughly dry it out before it cooks. And sometimes, after 24 hours in the fridge, like 24 whole hours, parts of the bird are still damp, like inside the cavity, or like the little chicken armpits under the wings. And it happens, it's fine, like that's just, I don't know, it's science. But you can deal with this situation really rapidly, instead of throwing it back in the fridge for another 24 hours, by running a lot of air very quickly over the damp bits, which evaporates the water and dries them out. So to make this happen, you have several options. You can blow on the chicken, like, which is not the best idea. You could also use a box fan, or a standing fan, or a ceiling fan, or like a handheld fan. Basically, you want a fan, like a thing that moves air. And the sort of fan that I use is found in most homes. It's known as a hairdryer. And the reason I use a hairdryer is that of all of the fan options, it's actually the most efficient. Somebody here who actually understands the engineering of these things can probably explain it better than I do, but basically it like more airs. Like it's like, here's the air, and it's like the air, and it's like the air. And then the chicken is dry, and that's great. The other reason that I use a hairdryer is like I have one. And as far as tools go, having one is the most important thing. And as it happens, actually, I have a very fancy hairdryer. I have the Dyson thing, which is like $400. And you can do this with any hairdryer, by the way. Like, I use the hairdryer that I have. I don't feel like I already spent $400 on a hairdryer. I'm not gonna go buy another one just for the chicken. And I should say the most common question I get when people learn that I own the Dyson hairdryer is it actually worth it? And guys, no one is paying me to say this. It's so good. Like, yes, it is totally worth it. It's completely worth it. If you have $400, which I know not everybody does, and it's not worth going into debt for, but if you are a person who has the luxury to spend $400 on a hairdryer, it is a wonderful hairdryer. It is so good at just like directing air at concentrated speeds at your head or at your raw chicken, as it happens to be. So there I was, standing in my kitchen, so intensely committed to my pursuit of the ideal roast chicken that I was pointing a $400 hairdryer up its ass, drying it. Guys, it was absurd. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was a ridiculous tableau. So of course I tweeted about it. Happy snow day! I am using an astonishingly expensive hairdryer to remove all the moisture from a chicken to maximize skin crispiness when I roast it. Send tweet. If you've ever had any sort of brush with virality, you will be familiar with the general velocity and trajectory of what happens next. Most of the people who follow me on Twitter kind of know like who I am and what I'm all about. So when I first posted this, there was like a fair amount of, oh, Helen, she's so wacky. And there was like a little bit of, I never thought of that. And then, of course, inevitably, there were a couple of people who were like, yeah, of course, I do that all the time. And I mean, I didn't invent this technique, by the way. This is a well-known and established kind of thing. Marcella Hazan wrote about it in one of her cookbooks from like the mid-century, and she credits it to Chinese cooks in the 1920s. I mean, this is a known thing. But the next day, after my tweet had like its little like, oh, hi, friends, like, here's what I'm doing, and they were like, cool, Helen, we see and acknowledge you. The next day, I noticed I was still getting a lot of notifications on this tweet, and I also noticed that most of them were coming from people who don't follow me. Most of them were like, who is this horrifying person who is cooking a chicken with a hairdryer? And like, not in the good way. These are not, like the specifics of these on the screen are not important. These are just 6 examples of people who are critical of my choices. The general vibe is not very positive. I'm not going to read them to protect myself. But it turns out that I had become a Twitter moment, which is when Twitter aggregates your tweets and serves them up to like every single Twitter user at once. And the thing with Twitter moments, and I actually really like this about them, is that they say exactly what your tweet said. They don't really editorialize. They don't rephrase things. They literally just share your tweet. But somehow, as my tiny tweet storm spread, it also began to change. I was watching a game of telephone in real time about me. This was not cool. I mean, for me, like it wasn't fun. But it was also kind of fun. Like, I mean, this is how virality works. And like, for whatever reason, I have been viral a couple of times before. And sometimes it's really like, because people are mad at me. Like there was this one time that Ben Shapiro threw the horrible insults at me. He was, that vicious man. He called me a feminist who writes for The New Yorker. And I cried for days. And sometimes being viral is really awesome. Like literally yesterday, my dog was on the front page of Reddit, which like, I don't know why, but it happened. My dog is really cute. So I know how this goes usually. Like the hairdryer chicken was not usual. For some reason, this cycle felt different. So here's what happened. I shared this tweet with my 50,000 or so followers, and then Twitter Moments boosts it to like 50 million people. And then those people share it with their people, who share it with their people, who share it with other people, who screenshot it and post it to Facebook so their mom can see it, and their mom sends it to someone else, and she puts it on Instagram, and then it's just like everybody in the entire world suddenly had opinions about chickens and hairdryers. And I was confused. And within 2 days, my inbox was full of permissions requests from local news affiliates who wanted to put the photo on their morning shows. I was scheduled one day to go on AM radio to talk about a story I'd written that was not about chicken and hairdryers. It was about like the replication crisis in nutrition studies. And after maybe 2 questions about dirty data, the interviewer was like, okay, but let's talk about the chicken. And I was like, that's not what your listeners want. This is an econ show. And at the same time, you know, like this isn't all about me, right? Like at the same time, other things were happening in the world. Like this was March of 2018. What a time to be alive. So there were other things happening in the world. Like for example, in the news one day while my chicken was happening, Rudy Giuliani was in the spotlight because he had worn a pair of AirPods like upside down. And he kind of looked like an alien, like he had little thingies. And so that was happening. And Darth, the Photoshop king of Twitter, who makes like really great little Photoshoppy illustrations based on things that are happening in the world, made a synthesis of that Rudy Giuliani thing and my hairdryer situation with like a red panda using a hairdryer that was an AirPod, and somehow this ended up on CNN. The New York Post ran this piece. Woman used $400 hairdryer to make roast chicken. I changed my Twitter display name to woman after this one. The Daily Mail, which is the worst fucking website in the entire world, the Daily Mail ran a really long story, this is like in the middle of it, that just sort of summarized my tweets after running them through a synonym generator. And I don't even know what that Ivanka thing is. God, they're the fucking worst. And somebody who works at the Daily Mail spelunked into Google Images to find this photo of me where I look like I want to murder everybody. And okay, sure. I mean, there were some people I wanted to murder by that point. And I don't actually know if you guys can see it. It's very small, but the caption on this photo is fantastic. I'm going to read it to you. It says, food lover, Rosner, right for the New Yorker. And I was like, oh wait, it's true, Rosner right for the New Yorker. So I wrote about the chicken and the hairdryer for the New Yorker. And actually our audience director, Lena, is here somewhere. Hi, Lena, and so she can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but my story about the hairdryer and the chicken was the #1 most read story on the New Yorker for literally 10,000 years. That was a joke, but for real, all of this that I have just sort of spun through with you guys right now, this went on over multiple weeks. The cycle of the internet is not in weeks, but somehow the chicken went on for multiple weeks. I mean, it was so bizarre that The Verge, the wonderful tech and culture website, The Verge, wrote an entire story about how weird it was that the chicken and the hairdryer refused to die. So, my story, as I said, began to distort as soon as it entered the world. And that distortion happened in 2 distinct ways. The first distortion was what I was actually doing. I thought, and I actually still think, that the words and images in my original tweet made it pretty clear what I was doing, right? They made it pretty clear that I was using the dryer to remove all moisture from a chicken, and that I was doing that to maximize skin crispiness, which would occur when I roast it in the future, a time that, as of this photo, had not yet happened. And yet, in the telling and retelling, those key facts started to drift away. In their place was a new reality. I wasn't drying the chicken with the hairdryer. I was cooking the chicken with the hairdryer. And that's silly. That's silly. Oh no, I went too far. No, I didn't. A lot of things are silly. This new reality where I was cooking the chicken with a hairdryer was corroborated by so many news outlets. This is one of, I'm not kidding, 50 or 60 examples I pulled up while I was digging into the backlog of the world to put together this deck. This is a local TV station in Houston tweeting, "A woman uses a $400 hairdryer to cook a chicken. Watch, short link." And I don't really know what you're watching because it's a photo, but someone cooked a chicken and put it on video, and it was not me. But it was corroborated and it was perpetuated, and there were radio stations and TV stations and those weird radio station Facebook pages that have 2 million followers, and there are hundreds of them, and I don't understand them. And other tweeters and commenters, and my email inbox was filling up, and people were writing other stories, and people were aggregating top tips about weird ways to cook your chicken. And I started to question my own experience. There was literally a point where I turned to my partner and I said, "Did I actually cook the chicken with the hairdryer?" No, I didn't. I definitely hadn't. I was standing there, I was holding the hairdryer up the ass of the chicken. I wasn't cooking it. But so many people believed that I had. And they were all yelling at each other about it. And they were yelling at me about how boneheaded I was to try to cook a chicken with a hairdryer. And the truth is, it is boneheaded. Cooking a chicken with a hairdryer is a ludicrous idea. These folks were not wrong in their assessment of what they thought happened. They were just wrong about what actually happened. The other way that my story got distorted was that in all of this, I somehow got lost. I was not the person holding the blow dryer anymore. And I don't want to be unfair, right? A lot of the people who were mad at me, there were a lot of emotions about this. There were a lot of people weighing in who did actually understand that I was drying the chicken, not cooking it. They they grokked that the dryer was not cooking the bird, which I don't think is actually physically even possible. But they also insisted very vocally, in very great number, that this method was terrible. And they had an alternate that was a lot better. For example, paper towels, which I don't know if you remember the words that I had said a couple of minutes ago, but I did that. I did that part. I did actually pat the bird down with paper towels before I salted it and let it rest for 24 hours and finished it off with a blow dryer before cooking it in an oven after rubbing it down with oil. And there were other people who suggested that I rub the chicken down with oil and then put it in an oven, which was also not the most helpful suggestion because it is in fact one of the things that I had done. So I was not sure what to do, right? People kept suggesting that I do these things that I had actually said fairly clearly, and that original tweet that I showed you, there were a lot of additional tweets under it. There was the whole New Yorker story. There were the stories about the stories. It was pretty clear what I had actually done. And people were like, but did you try the thing you did? It was, I don't know, it was mostly men. There should be a word for that. The thing is, though, a hairdryer is unconventional. It was a new idea to a lot of people, not to everybody. There were the people who very vocally told me that, of course, they had been doing that forever and it's nothing new to them. But whether it's a hairdryer or a hand fan or you're blowing on the chicken, ultimately it's just a tool. Ultimately, a tool achieves a job. And the job here was important. The job was to dry the chicken skin fully, because fully cooking or drying your chicken skin before cooking is not a bad idea. And this was really getting to me. Patting your chicken down with paper towels is not the same thing as massively dehydrating the skin of the chicken over the course of a 24-hour dry brine. And I originally actually had a really fun sciencey explanation for this, but we're already going to run way over time, and that was going to keep us here for an hour, so I cut it. But there's science behind all of that. So let's come back to this headline. Woman used $400 hairdryer to make roast chicken. It's a weird headline, right? This wasn't the only one like it. This was the Post headline, but there were a lot of woman does this thing. So, okay, let's talk about headlines for a minute. I know brytCAST did an amazing headline-based piece on Friday, and if you were there, you are just going to leave this conference with a master's degree in headline interpretation. But let's talk about headlines. So there are many structural categories of headlines. There are lifestyle headlines and servicey headlines and op-ed headlines. And headlines are not exactly the same thing as titles. Headlines are a subset of title. The name of a work is a title, but a headline is very specific. A headline is effectively an advertisement. It's a way of establishing a set of interests, a set of expectations, a set of in-groups and out-groups with the reader of the story. And this here is what I would call a news headline. The structure of a news headline is, at its core, pretty simple. Subject does action. Person does thing. X does Y. There are two variables in this sort of headline, right? X and Y. We have the person, and we have the thing that the person does. And a story only needs one of those two variables to be interesting in order to be what we would consider newsworthy. One random person on this planet of 7.5 billion people twists their ankle, not news. Unfortunate, but not news. Serena Williams twists her ankle. That's a national story, and it goddamn should be, because, and if I may, Serena Williams is the greatest goddamn athlete in history. And she deserves attention and love for a whole lot of things right now, and she also deserves attention if she twists her ankle. And the converse applies to this as well, right? Random person eats a breakfast burrito, totally jealous, but who cares? Random person finds evidence of life on Mars, now we're talking, right? That's a story. And it's even better if both the person and the thing are interesting. Serena Williams finds life on Mars. You're gonna sell a lot of newspapers, kid. It's a good business, not dying. So this headline, woman used $400 hairdryer to make roast chicken. This headline is structured as person does thing, but there is no person here, right? The person hardly matters. Woman, it could be Serena Williams, woman. But there's another layer to the relationship between the variables in this kind of headline. There's another way that they connect to each other. Like that random person twisting their ankle doesn't really matter. The person doesn't matter. The thing they do doesn't matter. But when we drop in a person like Serena Williams, the action actually starts to matter too. Serena Williams has an aura, and it extends to the things that she does. Her ankle is important. Her ankle is relied on by millions of people. Her relationship to her ankle changes what an ankle is. The implication of the sentence changes. When it's Serena, the ankle itself takes on its own inherent newsworthiness. Now, I am not famous. I don't think that my name should have been in that headline. I don't think it should say Helen Rosner. Like, nobody cares who I am. There's a threshold of newsworthiness, and Serena Williams is on this side of the line, and I am like on this side of the line. Like, no. But there is important information about me that helps you understand why the thing I did matters. The sentence, "Woman used $400 hairdryer to make roast chicken," is a sentence of absurdity. You as a reader are drawn into that headline because a person, this random unnamed woman, is doing something weird. And it's not just weird, it's laughable. This headline could just say, "Woman does ridiculous thing." And it's ridiculous, right? Like, that's why I posted the tweet in the first place. But within that ridiculousness is, as we've learned, something that's actually very true. It's very valuable. At least it's valuable if you care about good chicken, which I hope is most of you. And here's where the fact that I was stripped out of this starts to get to me. I know what I'm doing. Like, when I share a cooking tip on Twitter, it's because it works. Like, in fact, I'm so reliable in my correctness. I'm so good at the thing that I know how to do that it is literally my fucking job to do it. So this piece ran in the Post, but it was part of like a content share thing with Fox News. Which, like, I know, but like the woman who wrote it is a woman named Alexandra Dabler, who I called up a couple days ago. And I asked her why she went with this headline. And here's what she said.
I also think woman dries chicken with hairdryer, just for click purposes, not even search, if you're coming across and you're like, what, why? Is more intriguing than food writer does it. It's like, oh, she probably has a reason for doing what she's doing. It's not just, this crazy, weird, possible trend.
This is what I'm talking about, right? When I say that changing the context of who does the action changes the context of the thing they do. The headline that says woman, to use Alexandra's words, is crazy and weird. But the headline food writer changes the valence of the entire sentence. It puts a different cast on the seemingly ridiculous thing. What I, Helen Rosner, what I do in the kitchen isn't ridiculous. When I say something like this, it carries weight. Why does it carry weight? Why does it matter? Because of who I am, because of what I've done, because of what I've earned. I've written and edited hundreds of recipes. I have edited dozens of cookbooks. I have written at least one that I'm legally allowed to talk about. I've won a fuckload of awards. I work at the goddamn New Yorker. It is not anybody's ankle. It is Serena's ankle. So when I say, thank you. I'm like not worthy of being Serena's ankle, but like I'll take it. When I say that a hairdryer can help you make better chicken, you should not laugh at the idea of bringing a beauty appliance into the kitchen because, and here comes the part that I warned you about, no, that's the wrong slide. I am really fucking smart, and I am really good at what I do when I am not running a slide machine, and you should fucking listen to me. Yeah. Guys, that felt really good. I want you to have that feeling too. We're gonna do it. We're gonna all say this together now. Like, say it about yourself, don't just say it about me, okay? Ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3. I am really smart, and I am really good at what I do, and you should fucking listen to me. Oh, that was great. Oh, it's like a profane and aggressive version of Stuart Smalley. Okay. But this fucking headline, I can't get past this headline. Because what this headline probably should say is food writer does all this stuff because I am a food writer, not a random person. But it doesn't even say random person. It doesn't say person. It says woman. 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 This is the thing. This is the other thing. And if you're a man, you might not understand this. But it is shockingly common that a person who is not a man, if they do something unusual or unexpected or loud, other people of all genders assume that that first person doesn't have a clue what they're doing. The presumption is rarely competence. The presumption is almost always accident or stupidity. And you might think that I'm overstating this. That's a strong thing to say. So let's do a thought experiment, okay? You guys know Alton Brown? Like personally, he's a cool guy. No, like Alton Brown, right? Glasses, smart, TV shows, right? Like, okay, his whole thing is that he does these unusual solutions to problems that plague us in the kitchen. So like he makes beef jerky on a box fan, and he attached his pepper grinder to a cordless grill in order to grind his pepper more quickly without getting carpal tunnel. He's the kind of guy who does this sort of thing. So like, in our mind, let's think, if Alton Brown had brought a blow dryer into the kitchen with him and used it while he was preparing food, do you think that he would have spent multiple weeks in the news as a punchline? No. And of course, we're totally speculating, right? Like, we have no way of actually knowing if this is the case. Alton Brown is a genius. Completely. He's remarkable. Alton Brown is a genius. I am woman. And woman is a punchline. Okay, let's try another thought experiment. Man used $400 hairdryer to make roast chicken. I don't know, that's kind of cool, right? Like, you want to know what his secret is. You want to know more about that badass hairdryer. Man, hairdryer, chicken. It's like, oh, yeah, like he's got to know something, right? I want to know what he's knowing. Woman used $400 hairdryer to make roast chicken. Another way to say that is, look at this fool. Look at the frivolousness of her feminine purchases. Look at the bizarre, Pinterest-addled blockheadedness of her actions. Look at how little she understands. And I think that unknowingly I have internalized this as a woman over the course of my entire life. I think that a lot of women have. We are, on the whole, taken less seriously than men are. We are underestimated. When we speak, we are not extended the benefit of the doubt. We're assumed to be less intelligent, less informed. This is just a viral story about a chicken and a hairdryer. It doesn't qualify for outrage. But a life that is full of moments that don't quite qualify for outrage builds up. They become a heavy weight. Somehow, despite the fact that I have actually been remarkably successful in my life, despite the fact that I have proved my competence over and over and over again, despite the fact that more people than I ever could have imagined see that I have been able to perform my competence for like a room of 2,300 people, despite that, more people in the world than I ever can reach will never think of me as award-winning journalist and terrific and brilliant and hilarious and deeply attractive jumpsuit wearer Helen Rosner. They will think of me as woman. And the worst part, the real worst part, is that somehow I kind of feel responsible for this. I know I'm not, but I feel like I am. I feel like if only I were something, right? Like prettier or thinner, or my voice were lower, or my voice were higher, or I were sexier, or I were less sexy, or I took a Dale Carnegie class or something. I feel somehow that this is my fault, that I should have been able to control this and prevent this. Despite the fact that I can't, I feel like it's my fault that hundreds of thousands of people in the world, literally right now, today, at this very moment, think that I am the dipshit who tried to cook a chicken with a hairdryer. And I think that this might be part of the reason why I hedge everything. I think it's not just that I don't want anyone to think that I'm an asshole. And it's not just that I want everybody to like me, though I don't and do want both of those things very badly, respectively. I think in my life, this has happened so consistently. I have so frequently and perpetually been presumed to be incompetent, when in fact I am so much righter than whoever is doing the presuming, that I've somehow decided that as long as I am the person introducing into the conversation the notion of my fallibility, the notion that I am potentially garbage, I can own the low expectations of others. That's horrible. But this underestimation happens all the time for women. It happens even more for women of color and for trans women. It is a tentpole of misogyny. It is one of the pillars of the insidious ways that sexism eats into the lives of women and men and non-binary people and any person who interacts with any other person in the unavoidable overlay of gender that is our lives. But it also happens to all people of all genders. It's not just women. There are probably a lot of you here who don't know what this feels like, and God, that must be nice. But I would imagine there's also a lot of you here who do. So I want us to go back to this sentence. Some of us need to say it again. Some of us deserve to say it every day, multiple times a day. This is very self-helpy, and I didn't actually want this talk to be like a self-helpy talk. I wanted this to be about like the social dynamics of virality and also incidentally how to make better chicken for your friends and loved ones. But I actually think that this is really important, and it's not just important, it's kind of the same thing as the social dynamics of virality. It's not really the chicken thing, but it's the virality thing. There are imperfect stories that we receive whenever something goes viral, or whenever we consume media, or whenever someone genuinely and with generosity opens up themselves to us. We get an incomplete picture. But in particular, when something goes viral, when it's this microscopic sliver, when it's the 9 seconds of a Vine, when it's a YouTube clip, when it's a single Instagram image, when it's the 280 characters of a tweet, we have very little on which to go on, and we make these assumptions about people, and we are generous to some of them, and we are not generous to others. We allow things of some people, and we withhold things from other people. And they are people at the end of it. And we believe things about them without knowing who they are, and without knowing whether our beliefs about them mean that we are missing out on really fucking good chicken. So for all of you, whoever you are, whatever category you fall into, this is not just like a women and men thing. Whoever you are, if you were like nodding your head with like, yes, oh my God, yes, when I was like, strangers assume that I have no idea what I'm talking about. And sometimes I internalize those doubts, and I actually like genuinely still to this day have no idea really how to like stand up in the middle of someone else's conversation and remind them all that the reason I'm in the room with them is because I deserve to be in the fucking room with them, and I should probably be sitting at the head of the table. If you're one of those people for whom that feels like, yes, this one is for us. We're gonna say this one. And the rest of you, you lucky motherfuckers who don't know what this feels like, I want you to open your ears and open your hearts and hear what we are saying. Okay, ready? We're gonna do this. I am really smart, and I'm really good at what I do, and you should fucking listen to me. You are really smart, and you are really good at what you do, and we should fucking listen to you. Thank you.